Good afternoon, everyone. I'm just going to give folks a Zoom second or two to get situated. We don't quite have a quorum just yet, so we're going to hold off in just a second. Go ahead, Mark.
Bueno, buenas tardes a todos. Un poquito de orientación para Zoom en breve, pero todavía no tenemos quórum. Suficientes participantes, vamos a esperar un poquitito más antes de adentrarnos a eso. Muchas gracias.
Thank you. What I'll also ask is that as we get situated for this afternoon's meeting, I want to remind folks that we do have closed captioning available, and to do that, you want to select CC at the bottom of your toolbar from the menu bar. We also have Spanish interpretation available, and what you'll do is under interpretation, you're going to need to select English or Spanish. So I'll go ahead, Mark, you can give that announcement as well.
Oh, I already started the interpretation room, Snoo.
Oh, okay, perfect. And that works. All right, we have a few more folks coming in. Let's go ahead and get started because it's 2 minutes after the hour. I want to welcome everyone to our April meeting. It's good to be with you folks. Before we get started, again, I just want to remind folks that at the bottom of their screen, you can select English or Spanish under interpretation. And so that'll give you the opportunity to hear the program in English or Spanish. We also want to mention that there's no formal public comment in today's session. And so anyone who is part of the public, we encourage you to not only introduce yourselves in the chat, but also put any type of comments or questions that you might have in the chat, or you can also email us at publichealth.policy@state.or.us. And perhaps, Liz, you could put that particular web link into the chat so that everybody can see it, if you don't mind. Thank you. We have lots of our staff here to help with the conversation today. We have Christy Hudson, our lead at OHA. We have Liv Scarce, who's also one of the team members for OHA. She'll also be monitoring the chat for us. With that, let's go ahead and start and with some team introductions, if you don't mind. I'm going to just go ahead and go through our partnership roster. And what we're going to do is do something a little different as part of our warm-up today. What we'd like to do is when you introduce yourself, if there's an update from your program, from your community, kind of the word on the street, we encourage you to go ahead and share that bit of news right now, okay? So again, my name is Nuto Haynes. I am the facilitator for our meeting. I go by she, her pronouns. And I'm gonna go ahead and kick it off and start with, let's see, Ian, if you don't mind starting us off.
Hi all, my name is Ian Winbrock and I'm the current chair of the Whitaker Community Council. We're a place-based community development nonprofit organization located in the Whitaker neighborhood in Eugene in Lane County, Oregon. I use he, him, his pronouns and no relevant updates at this time.
Thank you. Alicia.
Hey, my name is Alicia Overstreet. I am the secretary and vice president of a small grassroots nonprofit organization called the Oregon Family Advisory Council, or ORFAC. I am an advocate and community partner out of Yamhill County. This time we really don't have any new updates. So
Okay.
pass them.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Kurt next and then Connie.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kurt Toombs. I'm the Chief Executive Officer for Eastern Oregon Center for Independent Living. Communities that I represent are people with disabilities, and I have no updates.
Thanks, Kurt. Go ahead, Connie.
Hi, I'm Connie Dillinger. I'm with All Care CAC. What else do I want to say? Okay, the word on the street is in my little town of Cave Junction, we are working on getting a houseless shelter. So I'm on the steering committee for that. It's really exciting. So I'll keep you updated. It's got to a pretty good start. All Care is going to be helping us, and I'll just have more to report and be asking questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Connie. We'll go with Rachel and then Veronica.
Hello, everyone. My name is Rachel, and I'm the Executive Director of the Family Justice Center in Washington County. And the update I have is it is Sexual Assault Action Month, Child Abuse Prevention Month, and Crime Victims' Rights Month. So we have a whole lot of activities as well as awareness building work that we are doing this month with our organization and partners and community.
Thank you so much. Veronica?
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Veronica Leonard, she, her, ella pronouns. I'm the Health and Wellness Director at Latino Network. And an update is that our weekly COVID vaccine clinics on Saturdays hosted at the Boys and Girls Club of Rockwood will be moving to a 12 to 4 schedule instead of a 9 to 4 schedule. So please come, get your community over here. We are doing first, second, and booster shots for anyone above 5.
Super. Thank you, Veronica. And then I'm going to go to Timur and then Amy. Maybe she might be wrapping up a call. So go ahead, Timur.
Yes, hello everyone. This is Timur Holov with the Slavic Community Center of Northwest. My pronouns are he, his, him. Updates, lots of things are happening with the Slavic community, as you might have heard, due to the war between Russia and Ukraine. So we're expecting to get some refugees, and we're looking for programs and opportunities to help people when they come here. And yeah, very excited to be able to help people when they come.
Thank you, Timur. Is Amy, are you back from your call just yet? If not, that's okay. We can check in with you in a bit. Now, that's everybody I have on my list. And as I see on the screen, is anybody here part of the membership that I didn't get a chance to call on? I apologize for that. I think that's everything. That's everyone. Fantastic. All right, welcome. Thank you for those updates, those quick updates about where you're at, what you're doing in your communities. We have a pretty full agenda as usual in our midst today. The first thing that we want to do is quickly, we're going to be talking about the Healthy Together Oregon policy option packages and legislative concepts. Our other objectives today is really to think about our full day meeting that we're going to be having in May. That will be in person, and then also we have a virtual option as well. So keep that in mind. We'll be talking about that. And then finally this afternoon, after the break at the top of the 2 o'clock hour, we have Rebecca from our, excuse me, all my notes here. Rebecca coming to share with us information about the Central Oregon Health Council. So Rebecca Berry will be joining us to talk about those improvement plans. With that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and let's just jump right into the policy option package. We've had some really great discussions with subcommittees this past month, lots of discussion. And so we're ready to share some of that back with you folks and also get some feedback from your own standpoints as well. So Christy, do you want to pull that up? And
Yes, I will. So just to reorient everybody, kind of where we are in the timeline for developing the POP and the legislative concept. We're technically in April, but on this timeline, we're still in March. So I'm just going to say we're still in March today. And really going to spend some time talking about the objectives of the policy option package. At your last meeting in March, there was a suggestion that we bring the funding and finance subcommittee together with the policy subcommittee. So we have formed a joint committee that has met twice now since your last meeting to start to flush out really the details of the policy option package. So we'll dive into that a little bit today and are really excited to hear the thoughts that you have on that work so far. So we'll see how far we get today. Hopefully we'll get some forward progress. And then from there, we're working to July 1, which is when we would need to submit a full policy option package to OHA. We're not going to touch on the legislative concepts today. I know Sharina is here, so if she has anything to add to this. But just as a reminder, we passed along the 7 strategies that you all prioritized last December to OHA's legislative equity team. They have been looking at all the feedback that we gathered from community during development of the state health improvement plan. So are using that to kind of frame out the legislative concept ideas that will be moving forward through to OHA. And we hope to bring back some potential ideas to you at some point, either at the May meeting or to the joint committee. So nothing really there today. We're going to focus in on the policy option package unless Sharina has anything else she wants to add, but don't want to put you.
Hi,
Sharina.
Christy. This is Sharina. I can just add that the legislative equity team is getting really close to submitting legislative concept placeholders based off of all the community engagement feedback that they have collected and reviewed. And so I think at our next meeting, I might be able to share that.
That would be great. That would be great. Thank you, Sharina. Okay.
Christy, I'm going to have you pause a second. I neglected to remember that Maria Callie is on the call today, and I didn't get to give her the opportunity to introduce herself. Is that possible to have her introduce herself? Perhaps Maria, you can do that in the chat too. She's on the Spanish language channel, so I'm not sure how to do that. You, Christy?
This is interpreter Mark. The idea is for her
you.
to just start speaking, and then I would just start speaking for her, but I'm not hearing her voice yet. I'm just letting you know that as far as the interpretation side. I'm not hearing her voice.
And there was a note in the chat new that Callie said she had many reports to deliver, so she appreciates our patience. So she might be in and out for this meeting too.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for letting me know that. All right, then it sounds like we can go ahead and move forward into our discussion around the POP then.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so what we have for you here that I just brought up, are you able to see?
Yes.
The one pager? Okay. So the joint committee had some conversation a couple of times since you last met as a full group. And based on that discussion, we've put together this, it's actually a 2-page document, but this kind of tries to summarize the current thinking on what this policy option package would be asking for. So, and I wish I could share this with you. Maybe I'll share this with you after I kind of go over it so you can take some time to read through it yourself when we get into the breakout rooms. So a $15 million investment. This is really just a placeholder. No amounts of funding have been agreed upon yet. That will happen kind of later on down the road as part of OHA's kind of a budget process in terms of identifying kind of all of the policy option packages that they will bringing forward to the governor. So the joint committee looked at 3 funding scenarios. One was based on a $5 million investment, one was on 15, and the third was on a $25 million investment. So for the sake of today, we're just going with the middle, $15 million, but that could change. That could be less, that could be more. And I think the spirit of this conversation is really around, like, is this the right direction? If you have, assuming you had $15 million, is this where you would spend it in support of implementing this plan? And with the joint committee's direction, there are really 3 buckets that we would use this money for. One is around communication. This has been a kind of a common thread in some of the subcommittees around really needing and wanting to see increased communication for Healthier Together Oregon. So, you know, developing a strategic communications plan and really supporting implementation of that plan to all corners of the state, because people can only use this plan for alignment if they know about it, of course. Another bucket of funding would be to support the addition of state staff, and I can talk a little bit more about the thought and dream behind those state staff. This really builds off of the dream proposal that you all saw in March too. And then the third bucket of funding would be through the provision of grants and contracts to community-based organizations, to partners who are working and developing and implementing community health improvement plans, and really using these funds to incentivize collaboration and cross-sector partnership in those plans. And all of this is really with the aim and understanding that if OHA is going to achieve the 2030 goal of eliminating health inequities by 2030, we have to get outside of the medical care system, which is really where OHA works, right? And we've done incredible work in terms of setting up coordinated care organizations, and we've received a historic behavioral health investment that we are rolling out. So not to say that there isn't more work to be done there. And yet we also know that 80% of what actually impacts health happens outside of that medical care system. And so this investment is really intended to develop and support the cross-sector partnerships that are needed to have sustained impact on the social determinants of health. So getting into a little bit more detail, again, these numbers here are just example numbers. With a $15 million investment, for example, $1 million of that could go towards communication. 4.6 million would go to those state staff that I'll share a little bit more about. And then that would leave about 9.5 million for contracts and grants to community. And this is a discussion point for you all. Like, is this the right prioritization? Obviously, these numbers would probably change depending on the funding amount. But you could also say, no, put it all to community, right? Communities know, let's give it all to community. You could say, let's do it all in communications. Like, this is the type of conversation that we're hoping you'll have today. In terms of the details of that funding, to get a little bit deeper into kind of what those contracts and grants could look like. Again, a lot of this is really directed to those who are working on community health improvement plans. CCOs have money in terms of HRS and share funding. There's some other CCO Medicaid related funding sources that are out there. Nonprofit hospitals obviously have some funding that they put into community. But oftentimes these funds are pretty restrictive, right? Like the CCO funds are often restricted by Medicaid, and public health funding that we put out is often typically pretty restricted by our federal funders as well. So asking for this level of funding would also come with some flexibility from the state in terms of what it's used for. And that's where, again, we would really look to all of you to help determine what are the eligibility criteria for these funds, where would those funds go. We would definitely see a major role for all of you in terms of like reviewing the applications and really making all of those funding decisions. So that would be really exciting. And then in terms of the state level staff, so the thought here, right, is that communities are continually coming up with really wonderful, innovative interventions and policy tools. And to get those to like other communities across the state, there really needs to be a platform for OHA to take those policy system and environmental changes and and bring them to scale with other state agencies. So OHA really doesn't have those types of staff. There is one position that you have met at a couple of meetings ago, Ashley Thirstrup, who is currently serving as the Director of Health and Education. So it is her primary role to ensure that OHA and Department of Education are coordinated and moving together towards an anti-racist framework and school settings that advance equity and health. But that's really an anomaly. So we don't have those types of positions in the state. So this is another idea, right? That we could hire and create more positions like that with focuses on other sectors. So there could be, say, a Director of Health and Housing position, or a Director of Health and Social Services position, or a Director of Health and Art, right? So again, this is kind of the dream space that you can be in today. Like, does that make sense? What sectors would those be? Who would those positions be? With 15 million, I think there were like 8 full-time positions that we would be able to hire with some additional fiscal and admin supports. With less money, we would only be able to hire a few. So there's some room there. But another question is, well, does that make sense, right? I've been talking to some other states who are doing similar health and all policies work, and they have state staff, but they actually place them out in communities. So it'd be more of like a community convener role. So there's lots of different ways that we could use these positions. And again, this is a great place for you to provide some thoughts and ideas behind all of that. I think that's all I have to say, New, unless you have anything else. Or I also would invite any of the other members of the joint subcommittee who might want to chime in here as well.
So what we're hoping to do in this next 10 minutes or so, 10, 15 minutes, is really give you all an opportunity to kind of digest some of this and share some thoughts. Part of the thing, as many of you know, I've been doing these mini one-on-one chats with the partnership members, and I've gone through almost half of you, right? And some of the things that I've been hearing is that we just need some space to process, right? And so that's what we really wanted to bring to this time today, is that the folks who have been coming to the joint subcommittee meetings have very nicely been voluntold by me to they've been asked to host the discussion today. So we have 4 folks from these committees who are going to really take some time to just hear other members' thoughts, right? And so we're going to go through, try to answer about 3 questions just to get your brain moving around. Is this the right direction? Is this, relatively speaking, the right direction that we want to see where this policy option package go? Okay. So what we're going to do is split up into about 4 groups. We have Timur, Kurt, Alicia, and Ian, who've stepped forward to really help just guide the conversation. These folks have been sitting through much of the conversation around the policy option package. And so they have some of the background knowledge that got us to this point. And so they're really going to help guide that conversation for you folks. And some of our OHA staff will be there to help kind of collect your thoughts and be note takers. Do folks have any questions about any questions for Christy or the rest of the joint subcommittee at this time before we go into our breakout groups?
I do. Christy, is the 4.6 million, that's for 8 staff?
I think it was.
Okay.
And again, I'm not the fiscal analyst here, so that is definitely subject to change. That was just kind of an estimate based on some previous calculations about cost of state staff.
Thank you.
But at the level, and the other thing to think that I wanted to reiterate is that this is a $15 million ask over biennium. So you'd have about $7.5 million per year.
Other questions folks have?
Do we know
we-
what, oh, sorry.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. No, I was gonna ask, are we, I would just wanted to clarify, are we looking at all 4 of these questions in each group, or are we doing a single question?
Oh,
per
that's
group?
right, Alicia. Thank you for that reminder. We were going to have each group do a single question. That's correct.
Okay.
So for the first question, for Alicia's group, you're going to answer, what are the short-term outcomes you hope would be achieved with this initial investment? For Kurt's group, you're going to answer the question, how would this POP or policy option package address health inequities? And then for group number 4, what issue are we trying to solve or fix?
Hey, New,
And
we've only got 3 rooms.
Okay,
So let's do short-term outcomes will be group 1. That's Alicia's group. Group 2, Kurt. How would this POP address health inequities? What are you trying to fix?
okay,
And group 3 will be what are the risks?
okay. What are the risks? That will be Timur's group. Ian, I'm gonna throw you into Timur's group as well. Since you are, does he have a different group or?
Yeah, I already have the rooms made up.
Okay, never mind.
Sorry.
I just wanted to give a quick point of clarification too, that actual 4.6 million, I went back to the proposal, and that's actually for 12 FTE. So that's for 1 management, 8 operation policy analysts, a fiscal analyst, research analyst, and administrative support. So that was the full package, was actually 12 at that level.
Great, thank you, Liz. So that's like a big team of 12. Okay,
With 8 of those 12 being the kind of the core, like director of health in something sector.
Exactly.
Yeah.
great, thank you. All right, so we'll have about 10 minutes to discuss this in your groups. If you find that you get stuck on any particular one, go ahead and move to a different question. You know, we all have the notes here with us in the agenda package, so that's perfectly fine, you know. Are we ready, Christy?
We're ready.
Groups?
All right.
Okay, perfect.
Zoom you out. Have fun.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Hi.
Christy, all we have is Amy and
Liz.
Liz. So that's all we need, right? All right,
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's it. There's only like 8 people in the meeting right now. So the groups are
Okay.
only 2 and 3 people each. You're not missing
Okay.
anything.
I just wanted to make sure because it was just Amy and then Liz was like, well, I'm just taking notes. And I'm like, okay. All right. Okay. So how do I get back into it? Oh, do I click down here?
I think you should have like join room.
Join breakout room 1. Is that me?
Move. Yeah, that's you.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Hi, Susan. Hey, new Susan.
Hi.
Susan just joined us too.
Yes.
Hi.
Hi, Susan. Welcome.
Thank you.
We're just wrapping up our breakout sessions. Folks are going to be jumping back into the main session in just a bit here. All right, everyone, welcome back. We're really interested in hearing from each of the rooms to see if there's anything that came up for folks during those discussions. Specifically, is there something you want to share back that was kind of a highlight of what the group was talking about? So maybe we'll start with the first question. What are the short-term outcomes you hope you would achieve with this initial investment? Alicia, I believe that was your group. Were there any particular highlight statements from the group? Thoughts?
So a few hiccups on my end. But we didn't really get to like dive into the question just yet, because we were doing more of kind of like a background, or giving more background information
No problem.
about that. So I don't know if Amy or Liz want to chime in and add more. I know we had towards the end there were quite a few questions that we were trying to get answered.
Okay.
And we ran out of time.
Do we want to ask those questions now of the group, or do you want to wait until we hear from all the groups? What do you folks think? Amy, do you have a thought?
I
about that?
literally was asking a lot of questions that I don't think pertain to the whole group.
Okay.
I just wanted clarifying questions of how it all works.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
Yeah, I think particularly the question was on the overall timeline, which I think Christy had kind of popped up and talked about like the beginning of it, like where we're at now. But I think that there's a curiosity around like what is the overall timeline for how this gets approved and kind of the process.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Why don't we save those questions for just a bit? We'd like to hear from the rest of the groups, and then maybe have a time for Q&A, and possibly we can put all of those questions in a I don't want to say rebuttal, and a Q&A to get back to you folks, because I'm sure that there are more questions that folks have about the timeline. How about we hear from Kurt's group? That question was, how would this POP address health inequities? What were some of the highlights from your group, Kurt?
And I'm going to try to touch on all of them, but if I miss anything, Connie and Tamara, please just jump right in. We believe that this would give the agendas of local level would be heard, voices in the community would be heard. It addresses inequalities outside of the medical umbrella, which we thought would increase college participation and increase mental health stability, strengthen mental health of individuals. Another takeaway was that it will kickstart communities without services, far-reaching impact for BIPOC and refugee committee and people with disabilities. It would get needed dollars of investment to CBOs on the front line. It would continue OHA's investment. It would give the HTO, excuse me, the dollars that's needed to implement our strategies. And last, it had the possibility of hiring people from communities that experience inequalities and increase the positive impact to those communities. And that's what I have new. Do you? Okay.
Yeah, that's great. I really appreciate those thorough notes. Let's move to the next group because we're running a little short on time. I want to make sure we get that last question in. So what are the risks of not making this investment? Is that you, Ian?
Yeah, so we have 5 points, and we also discussed fancy and fun earrings. So that was an aside, but also very critically important to our conversation. So the 5 risks that we identified are: 1, divisions and departments outside of OHA won't necessarily use a health equity lens for their work, which risks not accelerating opportunities to eliminate health inequalities by 2030. 2 is by not putting money behind true community equity initiatives, you risk it becoming lip service. So equity being something kind of abstract versus something practiced, and it's going to take more than a single pop, but it stands more of a chance if you make the investment than if you don't. 3 is losing momentum in terms of actuality and in terms of our moral momentum from the COVID-19 work and investments that have happened. A lot of money was found and distributed through the pandemic, and if it doesn't continue, we would risk the momentum, but also the belief in OHA as someone who values community leadership and community investment. And so there was a sentiment that OHA needs to seize this opportunity. Reproducibility was number 4, and that's outside of OHA. So other divisions and departments in the state of Oregon might see this as a way, as this collaborative approach, as a way to be kind of a magnet for funding. So we run the risk of not reproducing this approach outside. We use kind of like participatory budgeting by community-based organizations as an example. And then 5 was a fragmented approach to achieving health equity without the staff to focus the HTO's work. So having this kind of every department or even different divisions within a department have a fractured approach as a risk if we don't make this investment.
Great, thank you. Thank you to that group. What I'm going to ask is that folks, if you took notes, go ahead and send those to Christy and or myself. We will collect all of that and put them together as we kind of use this to also firm up the one pager that we're continuing to work on. That was shown by Christy earlier today. She'll send that out to the entire partnership as well as we firm that up. What I'd like to do is for Alicia, your group of you and Amy, any questions that you folks had specifically around timeline, I say go ahead and put that in an email to us as well so we can address those and then get that back to the entire group, because undoubtedly others have that same type of question. Okay, so what I'm going to do is ask that we kind of close this section out today, if that's all right with folks. We will definitely be retouching on this topic in the May meeting. And for those of you who've been continuing to do some of that work in those joint subcommittee meetings, we so appreciate the detail in which you're looking at this. So what I'm going to do now is we have about 15 minutes allotted to go into the guidance committee report and then ask some questions about what you want to see focused in the May meeting. Does that still sound like an appropriate time slot for us? 15 minutes. I see that our speaker Rebecca Berry is here. Welcome, Rebecca. I'm not sure which time slot you were you at the top of the hour? I want to make sure I respect your time as well. You're still good?
I'm good. I'm here for the rest of the meeting, and I apologize for
Perfect. No apologies necessary. Welcome. So let's move into that guidance committee report. I have Connie is going to be reporting out on the guidance committee. So Connie, I'm going to give you the floor.
Thank you. We had a pretty full meeting that last week, didn't we? Whew. It was interesting. What we did, we're trying to plan for the May meeting. It's going to be an all-day session. I hope everybody can attend one way or the other. What we're trying to do is do some relationship building. This is what our goal is for the May meeting. Relationship building, fostering a culture of inclusion and belonging. We're going to talk about storytelling. That's one thing that I thought would be very interesting. I think our committee is basically trying to make it more cohesive, more approachable, like we all have our own thing, but we all want to do the same thing. One of the questions is, why did you decide to be with the partnership? What was your goal? Was it just to check a box, or are you interested in helping Oregon Health Authority and Healthier Together? And we would like to have some input from all of you. Did we want it today, or did we want it at the May meeting? We were talking also about communication. That is a big thing for us. The other thing we talked about was updates on the membership. We're trying to get the REC, the CCOs, and different foundations. I think we did ask the Ford Family Foundation and they declined. Is that correct?
I've got a call set up with somebody on Wednesday. So the original person was not able to come, but somebody else is interested. So
oh, good.
Yeah.
And because Stan has left, we're really focusing on getting a faith-based representative, that's the word. And youth, we have more than, how many was that, Rachel? How many applicants? More than 200 of youth who want to be on our membership.
Well,
How does every-
the school-based health center is putting together a new youth advisory council. And so they put out a request for youth to participate on that group. That
Okay.
group is a team of 20 and they received like over 200 applications from
Oh,
across
okay.
the state. And so a colleague of mine in OHA reached out to others in OHA to say, hey, do you need any youth on any of the committees that you convene? Because we got a lot of really fabulous young people who want to get involved in state policy work. So this was kind of a wish that we've had at OHA for a long time, was to include youth in the partnership. And we've tried and failed miserably at it in the past. And this just seems like a nice opportunity to try and change that. So it's a proposal to you all that we look to those applications and potentially see if there's any young people that want to join your group.
And also, thank you, Christy.
Yeah.
We're really trying to find one guidance committee member who would like to join us. It's for 1.5 hours once a month. What we do is discuss basically what's going to be spoken at the partnership meeting. And if anybody has a need to, I know a lot of you are stretched thin, all of us are, but we would really enjoy if you could commit 1.5 hours per week. It's at 9 o'clock and we do wrap up very promptly at 10:30. So I would like to know, you don't have to tell us now, but at the May meeting, if somebody would like to step forward, we'd appreciate it. Does anybody have any ideas of what they would like to speak about at the May meeting? I think we have enough time, won't we, during that day? Oh, all that too? Oh, housing and transportation. Oh, boy. Ugh. That's hard. That's something that we need to talk about too. We have a lot to talk about, but we still want to make it interesting and fun and not so burdensome. So we have, oh gosh, what else? Collective impact conference sharing. What does that mean?
Yeah, and that's a plug actually. So the Collective Impact Forum is a really wonderful national, maybe international organization that provides technical assistance and capacity building around collective impact, which is of the model that we're using here. And they're putting on an online virtual summit end of April. And we are happy to support any of you that might want to attend that conference. Rachel is gonna go, and if there are others that want to join Rachel, I'll be going. A couple other OHA staff will be attending. So we thought it would be a great opportunity to have some report back and sharing from that conference at the May meeting, given that we'll be coming off of that conference the previous week.
Well, with that, I'm asking the partnership as a whole, how would you like to use the time in May? I mean, we have these things, this committee things, but also, how do you see it? I know everybody can't join in person, but does anybody have any comment, criticism on what they would like to see happen in May?
I love your outline, Connie, of the relationship and culture building. I'm looking forward to just being in a room with everyone and doing some learning together. So I appreciate those being top of mind.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I was hoping that we would get a response for that because we were really nervous about talking about it. Not an easy thing to talk about. So I think my time is up. Go ahead.
Thank you, Connie. Thank you for giving the folks an idea of some of the things that the guidance committee has already put together. I see that Rachel has her hand up. So go ahead, Rachel.
I just wondered if this might be a time to take some of the priorities and do some of the classic poster paper with sticky notes and those sorts of decisions and voting and things like that.
So by that, you mean maybe looking at the priorities and doing a little more formal planning when we have people in the room and virtually together to actually do some physical maneuvering a little easier than it can be on Zoom. Some of that type of work. Okay. And by prioritizing, Rachel, you mean, can we take a look at, which ones we want to start tackling first, second, third, that type of thing?
That type of thing, yeah. I know that we've been doing the surveys on them and we haven't gotten a lot of response from the surveys. And I wonder if because we have everybody sort of in the captive audience, it might be a time to just do a little bit of that physical work around it.
That process work, yeah. Great. Well, we do encourage folks that if things bubble up for you within the next couple of weeks, that you would reach out to any of the guidance committee members or Christy and myself so that we can really make sure that this May meeting is what you hoped it to be, right? It's a great opportunity to connect with one another and build that unity as we move forward in kind of looking at strategies, priorities, and then the future of the policy option package. We will have that piece definitely for sure on the agenda as well to see what the next step would be. Some of the calendaring or scheduling of that will be addressed as well. Any other last thoughts for Connie and the guidance committee for this piece?
Just a quick question. Could you refresh my memory of the date of the May meeting?
It's the 2nd of May from 9 to 3, is that right? And did we ever discuss what hotels we're going to use? Or where is the event going to be that day? Or we have to
I was hoping to have information out to everybody on Friday. So we're still working on it. But yes, the meeting, we have room reserved at the Portland State Office building, which is in the Lloyd Center, or I'm sorry, the Lloyd District, not the mall, Lloyd District. So pretty much right downtown. And yes, there are a couple of hotels right nearby that we can certainly recommend, and we will be sending all of that information out to folks this week. I really promise, as I know you're getting anxious to make your plans.
Yeah, I can't wait to see everybody. Who else is going to be?
Me too, Connie. Oh my God.
It's nice to sit here in your comfy clothes, but guess what? We're going to have to put on some Lloyd District clothes.
You can bring your slippers. It's all right. No judgment here. All right, folks. Thank you so much for that. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. As my children would say, business on top, Mom, party at the bottom. And I was like,
I
okay.
like that.
All right. Let's move into our break. We have 10 minutes for a break. Let's resume at 10 minutes after 10. So that's actually 12 minutes. I gave you a couple extra. 10 minutes after 10, and we'll hear from Rebecca. Keep everything on, folks. You can turn off your cameras, and then we'll start right up at 10 after 2, excuse me. We want to go ahead and move into our next agenda item this afternoon. We know that, like, given the role of Healthy Together Oregon, we know that the partnership was really interested in learning about how other community health improvement plans were aligning with the work that the partnership was doing. So we wanted to invite Rebecca Berry. She is the Grants and Metrics Manager for the Central Oregon Health Council. They provide backbone support for the regional health improvement plans and coordinate and share shared plans with the CCOs for their community. So that includes local, tribal public health and hospitals within Crook County, Jefferson, and then also Deschutes County. I'll turn it over to you, Rebecca, to go into a little more detail, and welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be back here with the partnership. It's been a while, and these are many new faces for me, our names, not all faces. So my name is Rebecca Berry. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And I have some information to share, but I was really kind of hoping that this could be really informal. I wanted to just kind of share some high level stuff and hope that perhaps as I'm sharing, if you have questions and want to interrupt me at any time, I would really ask that you please do that. I definitely work better when there's more of a conversation taking place versus me just talking, because that's really boring, honestly. So I work at a nonprofit organization called the Central Oregon Health Council, which you heard. We became a nonprofit back in 2011, about a year before coordinated care organizations started in Oregon. And so we existed in Central Oregon, and it's a long history of why we were started. But when CCOs, coordinated care organizations, started, Pacific Source got one of the contracts in Central Oregon. And so they actually approached us and said, you know, we want to actually start a model that looks a little bit different, in that we don't want to govern how we provide care to the Medicaid population. We want a nonprofit to do that. And we would like to enter into an agreement with you to do that. And so we started an agreement with Pacific Source. And so instead of Pacific Source housing their governance of the Medicaid, how the Medicaid population is served, that is actually housed with us at the Central Oregon Health Council. And so for example, our board of directors is who governs how Pacific Source serves the Medicaid population. In addition, we house a committee called the Provider Engagement Panel, and that's kind of like the group of providers and clinical folks that talk about policies and so on and so forth with regard to Medicaid. We also house the Community Advisory Council, which is made up of 51% Medicaid consumers and then 49% community-based organizations serving Medicaid folks in our region. And so that was kind of how we started. We have state legislation that allows us to exist in this fashion. Yeah, it is somewhat similar to Lane County. So they just started a health council about 2 years ago when CCO 2.0 started. That's probably longer now. I'm getting years kind of merged together in the pandemic. So
you got to add 7 years for pandemic years. That's what I say, Rebecca.
I know, it just is all, whenever CCO 2.0 started, I think 2019 or 20. So yeah, and so now everywhere Pacific Source is a CCO, they also have a health council. But those health councils kind of look a little bit different in each of those regions. In our region, we're also required through state legislation to help produce a regional health assessment and regional health improvement plan. So instead of, the CHA and CHIP that you hear a lot of, we call them RAWs and RIPs here in our region, because we do them collectively. And a lot of the reason why that happened in the first place is because some of our smaller counties just didn't have the resources to do such big documents and then to actualize or actually make make that health improvement plan stay alive and continue moving forward. And so when we work together and do it regionally, we have more resources that we can put into the pot to help each other. I would say it does do that, but also, we still really need to strive to work toward making sure that communities with less resources or places that are just needing more support are being highlighted, and ensuring that we're not losing their voices. So that's a little bit of a background. Let's see. So our health assessment and health improvement plan, like I said, it serves as the required document for Crook, Deschutes, and Jefferson County Public Health Departments. It's also the required document for our hospital system here. So they use the exact same one. Also, those two documents, our health assessment and health improvement plan, are used by all of our community mental health providers for their required documentation, and our early learning hub, our regional early learning hub, uses that data as well. So, we still have a long way to go in collaborating better, but we're learning each time we do this. This is the third time we've done this in a regional manner. And each time we do it, we're like, gosh, we could have done it so much better. And here's so many ideas. And so hopefully I'll share some of those learnings a little bit with you. A couple of which I could highlight immediately is our geographic region also, in addition to Crook, Deschutes, and Jefferson, includes northern Klamath County. And that's because folks that live in the northern part of Klamath County typically travel north into the south part of Deschutes for care. And so that care could look like accessing a food bank, to accessing a federally qualified healthcare center, or a public health department or school-based health center. So it's much quicker to travel up to Lapine versus driving down to Klamath Falls. And then the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs is definitely a relationship that we are working really hard to strengthen, and each time we do a regional health assessment, we realize that this relationship is really weak, and we would really like to do more work to make it stronger and to build that trust. And if you want to hear a little bit more about that at some point, I can share more details in a little bit. So currently our regional health improvement plan started in January of 2020, and it ends in December of 2024. And I was lucky enough to be part of the partnership when Healthier Together Oregon was being created. I learned so much. There were so many amazing people that were helping to design that document. And it was really fantastic because I got to learn about the priorities and then help with the strategies that were being considered and included, and the measurements that were being considered. And all of that information really helped us to align our regional health improvement plan with Healthier Together Oregon as well. And so you'll see when you look at our measures, which I'll show you in a little bit, that there's a lot of overlap. There aren't like word for word priorities outlined, but you'll see a lot of very clear overlap between both of our documents. So I was hoping to share a little bit about how we keep our health improvement plan alive and active in our region. And like I said, we have a long way, we've come a long way, but we still have a lot that we're learning as we're doing this. And if you have some observations or feedback, I would absolutely love to hear it, because this is how we make things better. So in our previous health improvement plan, we started work groups for each of our priority areas. So back in 2016, we said, you know, we haven't been doing a good job of keeping our regional health improvement plan alive in our region. What can we do about that? So we actually started work groups, and we used to meet in person, but as you know, COVID kind of changed all of that, and we moved on online. And now we're actually wondering if we'll ever meet in person again, because our region is so big, it takes a number of hours for the eastern or western, northern or southern part to travel to meet each other. And as a result, typically when we met in person, the majority of folks who participated were from Bend or Redmond. And we now get people from Warm Springs, from Gilcrest and Crescent, all the way over to Prineville, Culver, Metolius, like all of these towns, which maybe you've heard of or maybe you haven't, but it's been really great because more people are able to participate than they were before. And that's something that's really valuable to us, is to hear voices from a number of different communities, because we know all of our communities look a little bit different. So are you all okay if I share my screen and show you some stuff? Yeah, okay, great. Okay, so this is our website. Let me pop that in our chat here. And so on our site, the work groups can be found under our teams and work groups. And there's 6 different priorities areas in our health improvement plan: address poverty and enhance self-sufficiency, behavioral health, promote enhanced physical health, stable housing and supports, substance and alcohol misuse, and upstream prevention, which addresses things like kindergarten readiness, 3rd grade reading, childhood immunizations, and things like a sense of community belonging. So it's a really broad section. But in each of these sections, you can see the overall aim of that regional health improvement plan priority area and the measures that we are tracking. And each of these measures actually go to our Central Oregon Health Data site, where these measures are constantly being updated, at the very least on a yearly basis. This down here shows the people that participate on a regular basis in this particular work group. A voting partner simply means that you've attended more than 2 meetings, and that's all that it is. And so, the hope is that by attending more than 1 meeting, you kind of have a general sense of what the group is working toward, and can kind of understand how we work together through facilitated consensus in our work groups. And so our staff that support it are over here. And then it talks about the meeting calendar and all the packets with information. And so let me move this around really quickly. Sorry, my screen is so small today. So each work group has a live document that they access every single time they are in a meeting. And so each work group has the, you know, the members, what their pluses and deltas, so things that they liked about each meeting and things that they would like to see changed. We track what's going on through a thing called this is kind of like it's what people call A3s. It's basically a focused way to move through a problem and come up with some strategies. And so a lot of what we focus on are the actual measures in the health improvement plan, and then looking at the different areas and actually coming up with strategies that may or may not work based on the specific population that they're trying to focus on. So each measure has one of these associated with it. And then there's small groups that meet to focus specifically on a measure. So in address poverty, going back to this, there's increasing high school graduation rates among youth experiencing economic disadvantage, decreasing food insecurity, super small, easy one to fix, decreasing the percent of individuals living at poverty and income constrained. So that's otherwise known as ALICE, asset limited, income constrained, and employed. Housing and transportation costs. And so when you look at these, each one is connected to our Central Oregon Health Data Site, which tracks these measures. And I'm sure you all understand that Oregon Department of Education has had some slight delays in their data. And so, for example, our high school graduation one, our last one was prior to COVID. And so we're working with Oregon Department of Education to get updated data for this measure. But when you look at addressing food insecurity, again, the measurement period was 2019, and this is because it's a national measure. So typically national measures are a little more delayed versus some of our local measures. We can get updated data. So this comes from Feeding America. And so we can look at this and say, we'd like to look at the Crook target for the Regional Health Improvement Plan. And so the Crook target is that only 13% of people would be food insecure. So we would decrease that, but it looks like we're just a little bit above that. We were in 2019, which I would guess is much higher now than it was before. So that's kind of how our work groups are set up. And then there's a number of different ways that we fund things. So over here in how to apply, we have standard grants, mini grants, and impact incentive funds. And so these standard grants, there's a number of different grants that are opened and closed based on what the work groups want to fund. I should back up and say that our Regional Health Improvement Plan is responsible for investing $12 million over the 5-year course of its life. And so each work group has about $2.5 million, $2 million to work with. And so they use that money to open up requests for projects or proposals, RFPs, into the region. And so right now we have regional coordination for sexually transmitted infections open. That's the only one that's open at the moment, but these open and close all the time. And we let folks know that there's opportunities to apply for those.
Hey, Rebecca, can I come in? Where does that money come from, the $12 million?
Yeah, I figured someone would ask that. So we have a contract with Pacific Source, our CCO. And so we created this contract a number of years ago, and basically they give us $2.5 million a year that we then directly reinvest back into our communities through the Regional Health Improvement Plan.
Is any of that related to like the health related services or the share funding?
No, so those are separate, and that money goes through our Community Advisory Council. And so while the share money and community benefit initiatives also improve the health improvement plan, it's a separate bucket of money.
Is there a reason why it's separate?
So we set up this agreement with Pacific Source back in 2012, and so this has always been the money that we've been given to reinvest. And so this was a contract prior to share monies and CBI monies. And so we continue to keep this as the basis for how we have funding to invest for the health improvement plan.
Okay. And what about the hospital funding? Is that part of this too?
Can you share more about
Like the community benefit investments that hospitals have to make?
So that money is separate, but it's under a specific priority area. So right now, our hospital system is focusing on substance and alcohol misuse. And so that's just an additional funding stream that our region can apply for funding for. Yeah, Susan, you have your hand up. I'm sorry, I'm not very good at managing the.
No, actually, you were right on it. So does OHA require Pacific Source to distribute that funding, or is it discretionary on the part of Pacific Source?
So the only amount that's actually required to be invested is the share money and the CBI, Community Benefit Initiative monies. So those are the only ones that have like requirements. So each CCO looks a little bit different in how they invest their, what they call shared savings. And so that shared, this is just like so messy. The shared savings is like, basically they saved money because of how well the Medicaid population was cared for. And so through that savings of money, each CCO chooses how that money gets spent back into communities. In our region, they give it to us, the Central Oregon Health Council. But in other regions, CCOs choose to invest that money differently. And I wish I could say it was the same for everyone, but it's not. And it's really complicated. I'm sorry, Susan, that's not a great
No,
answer.
that makes perfect sense. I mean, I've dabbled in it enough that it's clear.
Clear as mud. Yeah, totally.
As clear as it gets.
Yeah, so we.
Thank you, Christy, for that.
I'm glad you asked that question. Thank you. Yes. Yeah, so because we're also an organization that's somewhat older, we had some older money that we hadn't invested back into communities right away. And so we actually created this other fund called the Impact Incentive Fund. And what this is doing is trying to encourage organizations to apply for other grants that would actually impact our health improvement plan. And if they get that grant, we will match it up to $250,000. And so people are going and applying for all these different grants that they want to either expand the timeline, like make the timeline longer, or serve more communities or more people if they were given double the money. And so all they have to do is fill out this short request form, share a little bit about their grant and how it would serve the region, what measure in the health improvement plan it would impact. It goes through a review, and then that money is earmarked. And so we have about $3 million in this bank that we set aside, and people are just applying for all different kinds of grants, like through Oregon Community Foundation, through OHA, through the community grants through OHA. Like I was getting texts from people last Friday. We got a grant from OHA and you matched it through the Impact Incentive Fund. We're so excited. So it's been a really great way to kind of encourage people to apply for grants. And for folks who have never written a grant before, we also offer a consultant, a grant writing consultant, to help them learn how to successfully write a grant. And so we pay that consultant, and that consultant is available to that person or organization completely free of charge to help them with that. Any questions on this part so far? Okay. I wanted to share, so our grants, we have these scorecards that our work groups use to help score the grants that are submitted. And so this is available to the grantee before they apply, so they can see what we would be scoring them on, and as a way to help them prepare their questions. So they are answering these things. So we ask things on project details, diversity, equity, and inclusion, evaluation and sustainability, project support and partnerships, and budget. And so all of these scores add up to 100. And so each of our work group members reviews our grants, and then they score them through, we use SurveyMonkey. So they actually have this scoring sheet in SurveyMonkey, and they just fill it out, and then we add up all those scores and share it with the work groups. We're also in the process of creating an equity tool, and this is internal use only, so pretend that you didn't see this, because we're still working through it. But we have an equity tool that asks a number of different questions. So when we're creating new processes or applications, we have been working to kind of go through an equity tool to make sure that we're trying to make sure that we're considering varied voices and trying to make sure that it's as equitable as we hopefully can make it. But again, this is something that we're really learning around. And one of the things that we learned is, for example, the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs, they asked that we add a section in our applications to upload an MOA or MOU when somebody says that they've been working with the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs. And so if in fact there is an active relationship with the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs, then a memorandum of understanding or agreement, MOU or MOA, already exists, and that applicant should be able to upload that to show proof that that relationship is active, and people in Warm Springs, tribal members, are actively working with that organization. And so we have added that to all of our applications. So if somebody says that they are partnering with the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs, we ask for further proof. And then we share that information with our tribal partners to confirm that for funding. So it's just one way that we're trying to be better partners. And then how do we share all of this stuff? I wanted to share one more thing. You saw that we have this Central Oregon health data site. Let me move us out of the way here and find it. There we go. And I'll drop this in the chat too. And this site is can be translated into Spanish and also Mongolian, because we have an epidemiologist in our region who Mongolian is her first language and English is her third language. And so we had it offered to be translated into Mongolian too. But this site has, again, all of the 6 priority areas of our regional health improvement plan. And like I said, each one, so if we went to stable housing and supports, each one shows the current state of the measure when our health improvement plan was created, where we want to get to. And then if somebody wanted to see the current update, they can click this and it goes straight to that measure. And so it shares like the trend, if it's trending in the right direction. It's trending down, which is great, because that means less people are severely rent and mortgage burdened in our communities. This is from the census, and so if ever anyone knows, census data is really, really old, and they recommended a 5-year period. And so the most recent data we have right now is 2015 to 19.
Rebecca, there was a question in the chat about how this particular website was created.
So we partnered with an organization called Conduit Healthy Communities Institute. So they provide kind of like the basic structure, but we designed the site ourselves and we manage the data on it. And how we're hoping to share what we're funding is under this site, this part here, currently funded projects. So this shows we're starting to load this. This is pretty new. We started it in January, but we're loading all of the different projects that have been funded. Definitely extra staff time to support this is important. It's definitely not something that can be done super easily, but if you have interns, that's really helpful. I work with a lot of interns that help me manage this site. But for example, growing sunflowers was funded through the Upstream Prevention Group. And it helps to support these 2 measures, increasing letter name recognition at kindergarten readiness, and increasing 3rd grade proficiency. Each page tells a little bit about the project. So the aim, kind of an overview, and then what they hope to accomplish and how much they were funded. More details about the actual project, how this project looks at equity in its work, some objectives that they hope to track, and when we hope to see results. And once a final report is submitted, it goes into this what we're learning section. And so these are all past funded projects on our site. So these are all projects that we've funded in our region and the things that we've learned from them. So for example, VeggieRx was a project that we funded in our region. It shows who was involved, what they wanted, what their outcomes were, what some key highlights are, what successes or challenges they ran into. So this is kind of how we're hoping to share, what we've learned, and then also what we're currently funding. And I forgot to show you one other thing. Under each section, under each priority area, further down, it links to different things that are connected to this priority area. So this priority area is address poverty and enhance self-sufficiency. And so these are all the different stories that we have about economic stability. Some of them are mini grants, so grants under $5,000, and some of them are larger grants. This one's all about what we're learning in education, what we're learning about built environment. And then people can get more information on promising practices, how to get involved, where to go for grant funding, both locally and nationally. So
that's fantastic, Rebecca. I want to pause a moment. I know that the wheels are turning in a lot of our heads of like how we could use this information. Thank you so much for such a detailed presentation. I want to open it up to members to see what type of thoughts they had or questions they had for Rebecca. We want to make sure that we have time for that this afternoon. Questions or thoughts that are bubbling up for you. I know that Rachel had mentioned that we should probably have something or position FTE in our POP that represents the work behind this piece, because we know that it takes a lot to keep this not only accurate, but viable, right? Good information for people. Thoughts from members?
Rebecca, I have a question for you. I'm curious what so you said that you've been doing this community health assessment, or I'm not sure if it's a CHIP, whatever it is.
Don't worry.
But I'm curious how you were doing the data collection, and who do you have internal people to analyze that data, or do you do all the work internally for those assessments, or do you outsource it?
That's a good question, Esther. So we actually really rely heavily on our public health partners because they have epidemiologists that we work closely with. So while I have a background in qualitative data, so doing interviewing and then pulling out themes from those interviews, I definitely rely on our epidemiologists to get that quantitative data analyzed properly. And so they're the ones that help us make sure that the data that we're putting on our site is accurate and up to date and analyzed properly. And then we do focus groups every few years also to actually add that kind of more storytelling piece that quantitative data just doesn't offer. Does that help, Esther?
Yeah, that does. Thank you so much.
For sure. I know I spoke a little long, but I wanted to also share that we're starting a continuous survey collection in our region. And so we're in the final stages of putting it together, but it's a survey that we will open up to anyone who lives in Central Oregon. It will be available in English and Spanish. A number of different ways that people can access it. They can access it from home or through our partners, our community-based organization partners. But it asks a number of different questions on people's perception of what they believe is an important health issue. And also what is an important health issue for their community. We have a lot of questions on discrimination, race, equity, which we're really interested in kind of seeing what people will be sharing about that. And we're hoping that this survey will help us to select the priorities for our next health improvement plan, because we want to hear from our community members instead of, making our best guesses from the data. So we just think it's going to be hopefully a much better way to help improve community health and well-being.
Rebecca, can you speak a little bit about how much you invest in communications? When we were looking at the POP, the joint subcommittee was really looking at what's the price tag on how we do communications, and so to stay so engaged in the large region that you have, what does that take?
Yeah, so I would say we rely a lot on our partnerships And those, we've invested a lot of time and energy and hours making sure that we've built strong, trusting relationships. Again, that is something that we can always improve, and we're really working to do that. But that's probably the biggest thing that we rely on. So for example, when we're going to release this community survey, it's going to be through all our partners. And in some cases, once we start getting the data, if we see gaps in specific prioritized populations, then we're going to be reaching out to specific community-based organizations, contracting with them, and probably paying them some money to help us get survey responses back from their the folks that they serve. So that's kind of how we usually do it. We hopefully at this point we don't know how much it will cost, because we don't know where the gaps will be yet.
Yeah. Other questions for Rebecca? Comments for the group?
And if anyone wants to see our grant platform or anything, I would be so happy to meet one-on-one with you. I'll leave my email in the chat. I would love to totally geek out on data with you all. I love it. It's so much fun. And so, we learn so much, and your insight, anything you observe and want to share, I would be so happy to hear it.
I'm sure you'll have some takers on that geeking out piece, Rebecca. There's plenty of them here among us. I do want to say thank you. It's so nice to hear how you began, your involvement with the partnership, and now you're kind of leading that effort locally, which is such a wonderful way to see the work come to fruition in a regional aspect. I would imagine that this group would reach out to you for further thoughts and inquiries as we continue to move the work of the partnership to come to a bigger even platform across the state. I want to close out this piece with Rebecca. If folks have any additional questions for her, please do reach out to Rebecca as a source to brainstorm and whatnot. And see if we can't capitalize on the interns that she finds over there in Bend. With our last few minutes, what other order of business do we have? I'm looking at our guidance committee. Also, Christy, any other thoughts that we need to make sure we get before we leave today?
I don't think we have anything from OHA's perspective, but I would love to answer any questions or final. I did have a burning question for Rebecca.
Yeah.
If there's nothing else businessy. Sorry to reopen. Rebecca, as I think you gathered, we're developing a policy option package to support Healthier Together Oregon. So if you had a magic wand and the power to make one policy change to support the work of health improvement plans broadly, or thinking about your regional health improvement plan, what would it be? What would OHA do differently? What would other state agencies do differently?
Christy, thank you for asking that. I totally forgot to mention that. One of the challenges that we are struggling with is, we're trying to educate on advocacy and how that is different from lobbying. A lot of people have a really hard time understanding the nuances of each of those and what organizations can do what. And so as a result, have avoided kind of dipping their toes into that realm. And so I think some really concrete supports and perhaps some like tests of concept would be super helpful to create. So for example, say we wanted to do something on food insecurity and a group wanted to learn more about that. And so they learned about advocacy, but then we could provide them with like an actual test case that they could actually go through in order to test it out and like dip their toes into that work. So I think oftentimes what's hard is like applying the concepts or the ideas, if that makes sense, like actualizing it and having the what I call self-efficacy or confidence to actually do that work, because it's often scary and unknown and something that many of us have never really done. And
so examples of how communities have taken policy ideas and successfully brought it to a policy change.
Yeah, and give like concrete examples of like, here are 5 things you could do right now in your community, or 3 things or 2 things or whatever it is that would kind of help folks kind of take that leap for the first time. Like I know a lot in our work groups, like $2 million seems like a lot of money, but it's not for like those measures. Especially when only about $500,000 of it is for each of those measures. And so what are they going to do? Well, advocacy, policy work, things that are really going to impart systems change is where we need to focus. But people are scared of doing that. And so how can we help people understand that we can do this? It is hard, but this is where we need to go to actually impart true change.
That seems like a great thing to end on. Yes. I don't know a higher bar we can end on personally.
That's right, Ian. Absolutely. So with that, we say thank you so much, Rebecca, and everyone today. We will convene in May, both virtually and in person. And so you'll be getting probably a flurry of emails from Christy and her team at OHA, and probably from myself if I haven't caught you for a one-on-one chat yet. And so we will do that. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to Christy or myself in any way, or anyone on the guidance committee. Otherwise, we'll call it a day, and thank you for your time and attention. We'll see you in May. Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Bye. Thanks, Rebecca. Bye, everybody. Bye, Connie.
Bye. Bye.
Bye,
Bye, Tamara. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Captioner. Thank you.